Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we're going to be talking about sewing knits. And not just sewing knits, but sewing knits on the sewing machine. I love using my serger for all my knit projects, but I've gotten a lot of questions about how tips and tricks, asking for tips and tricks on how to sew knits on your sewing machine, and if it's even possible. Well, I'm here to tell you it is possible, and I'm going to show you how to sew on your sewing machine with knits. I'm going to give you a few tips, a few tricks. I'm going to show you different stitches, and we're going to sew up a free pattern today by Friday Pattern Company. It's a top pattern. All the information for this top is going to be on the description below, so you can go ahead and grab it and sew it up with me. But I'm going to show you just exactly what to do to sew on your sewing machine. So let's get started. All right, we're gonna get started, and this is a very simple sew, so that will be really good. The first thing we're going to do is we're gonna grab our bodice back and our bodice front, and we're gonna place them right sides together. We're gonna sew our shoulders right sides together, and we're gonna sew our sides right sides together. All right, so we're gonna put that, and I'm gonna head over to my machine and do that in a minute. While I'm there, I'm also going to grab my neckband, fold it right sides together here at the short raw edge, and sew that up. And we're also going to prep our sleeves. Everything is kind of sewn at the same time, so it's a quick sew, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it on my sewing machine. I'm gonna go over there and give you some different stitches that you can use to sew this up. So I'm gonna go ahead and right sides together at the inner seam at the sleeve. Once we sew all this up, then we'll attach the sleeve, the neckband, and we'll have to hem, and we'll be done. Again, this is a super quick sew, so do it. All right, friends, there's a couple stitches that can be used for sewing with knits. Now, I like to use, my favorite stitch is this stitch right here. It's called a triple stitch. And I'm gonna show you what that looks like in a little bit, but this is what it looks like on the sewing machine. It's 3 little lines, a skip, 3 little lines, a skip, 3 little lines. This is the triple stitch, which is my favorite. There's also the lightning bolt stitch, which is this like zigzag stitch, but it kind of goes zigzag down. I like it, but I don't love it. If I had to choose between the lightning bolt stitch and the regular zigzag stitch, I would go with a regular zigzag stitch, more of a stretch stitch zigzag stitch. There are other stitches that my sewing machine offers to use with stretch fabric, but I'm just gonna stick with these because most machines have these 3 stitches here: triple stitch, lightning bolt stitch, and zigzag stitch. So I'm gonna show you the difference in all of these. All right, now for my pattern, I'm going to be using the triple stitch. I just realized the fact that I picked a black fabric to sew up, and you won't really be able to see the stitching. So I'm going to use this other fabric, it's a knit fabric, to show you the different stitches. And then when I sew up my top, I'll show you and try to show you a close-up of what it looks like. All right, we're gonna start with that triple stitch because that's my favorite. So mine is a 5, and the setting is a 2.5 length. And I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Now, once I start, it takes a little bit, it's a little bit longer time consuming of a stitch because it's going back and forth and doing those 3 stitches. But as you go, you'll see what that looks like. Hold on. All right, let me show you what that looks like. Here's a close-up of that stitch. You can see that it's 3 stitches, a gap, 3 stitches, a gap, 3 stitches, but it looks pretty much like a straight line. And then when you stretch it, it stretches really nice. So it does a pretty straight, even stitch. So I like that because it looks more like a straight stitch than any of the other stitches that we're going to do. I really, really like that stitch. And if you do with the same color thread, you won't even be able to tell that it's actually almost like a zigzag stitch. The next stitch I'm gonna try is number 6 on my machine, which is the lightning bolt stitch. I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Now the lightning bolt stitch is a 2.5 length by a 1 width. This is what the lightning bolt stitch looks like. It's a very small kind of zigzag stitch.
gives you a little bit of stretch, but not as much. I can feel it not wanting to give much give here. It's kind of like almost pulling when the triple stitch just stretches so nice. But the zigzag stitch, I mean the lightning bolt stitch, it stretches, but not as great. See how it kind of looks a little wonky now that I've stretched it? The last one is the zigzag stitch, the actual zigzag stitch. Now, usually if I'm going to do a zigzag stitch, I like to do it a little bit wider and longer than the machine original plan for it is. But we're just going to sew it up here like it originally asks. And that is a width of 1.4, I mean a length of 1.4 and a width of 3.5 is what my machine sets its zigzag stitch to. This is the zigzag stitch. And the zigzag stitch gives me a decent amount of stretch, but not a whole lot. See, it's like still a little bit tight. This is the reason why I love the triple stitch. It's just, it stretches so nicely, especially for necklines and stuff like that. It's just a better stretch. This zigzag stitch doesn't give me much stretch at all. So those are the 3 different stitches that are easy to do on your sewing machine. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is about your needle. Do I need a different kind of needle for my knit projects? Well, the answer is technically yes. You want to use a knit or ballpoint needle because the needle is so sharp on some of these that it will catch the fibers of your fabric and clog it up or push them underneath and have a hard time. But I actually just use a universal needle for all my sewing and it does just fine with my knit projects. But a ballpoint needle will probably be the best for some machines that are very, very finicky. So you want to look for a ballpoint or stretch needle. Now another tip I'm going to give you, if you're working with fabric that is really thin and that likes to bunch over like this, when you start, I like to take more seam allowance than just the little bit that it asks you for. If you have a pattern that only gives you a 1/4 inch seam allowance, that's kind of hard because if you see that a 1/4 inch leaves the fabric edge being really close to the dog feet, the dogs right here, the feed dogs, the dog feeds. So I want to come out so that my fabric, I'm going to try to edge it correctly, hold on. I want to come out so that my fabric is actually on the outside of my foot. You see how there's a little bit of fabric here on my foot? If that means moving my needle over to the left so it's closer to the edge to continue the seam allowance, I would do that because I want my fabric to be cut at the plate so that way it's not going to get sucked in under the foot, and that happens a whole lot when you're working with knits. It tends to get eaten to the bottom and then it's gonna get trapped. If I go like this, sometimes it wants to, oh my gosh, it's already doing it. You'll end up wanting to eat and go under, and then you have this edge that's just fraying and not great. So I want to make sure that the fabric comes off the plate so that way it doesn't want to bunch up and get caught up underneath it. Now if you're starting right at the edge, let's act like we're starting right off at the beginning. Sometimes it's hard to get that first stitch started. It wants to jam. Now this one, I'm trying to show you, and this one did a really good job on doing it, but sometimes it tries to get stuck underneath it. If I'm having an issue with my fabric wanting to get stuck underneath it, one thing you can do is add a little bit of interfacing or like a heavier fabric right underneath just at the beginning. So you're just, let's act like this is some interfacing that I'm adding to it. You're just going to add that at the beginning here so that your needle has something to latch onto before we get started, and that will help it glide much easier. And then you can always remove this other piece. Oh, my thread got caught on it. The other way, the wrong way, hold it. All right, and then you can remove that piece, but that makes it, you can remove this off the edge, but that makes it much easier to get started. So that's another tip right there. All right, now that we've got our stitches and we know what stitch we want, see, not the greatest. We're gonna go with the triple stitch. I'm gonna go ahead and change it to my triple stitch, and I'm gonna sew up all those things on my top. So we're gonna get started here with the shoulder seam, and I'm gonna show you, this is a very thin fabric, but again, I do the same exact thing. I make sure my fabric is kind of at the edge and get started. Now, when you first start, take it slow, because if it gets caught, you wanna take care of it before you're all the way to the edge, and now you're just upset. All right, there is my shoulder, has been sewn. As you can see, stretchy stretch. And that is my triple stitch there. If I open it, it looks really good on this side as well. No problems. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and sew up the sides and prep all the sleeve and the neckband, and then we're gonna sew this top together, and I'm gonna show you how it looks so professionally done with my sewing machine.
All right, now that I have triple stitch that down, we can go ahead and add our neckband and sleeves, and that is basically it. Then we'll just have to hem. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my sleeve right side out. My bodice I'm gonna leave inside out because I'm gonna fit my sleeve into my bodice. And remember, I marked my sleeve back right there, and I want to make sure that I'm touching my sleeve back with the marks that I marked. So this one goes on this side because I'm going to fit in my sleeve through my armhole, my arm side. And I'm going to match up here my armpit seam of my bodice with the armpit seam of my sleeve. Now, for the inside of your top, you can open up that seam allowance so that way it's nice and flushed here on the side. So that's what it would look like on the inside. Now, because this is knit, you don't have to finish the raw edge. It will not fray on you. So that's the great thing about sewing with knit. Now, I also have my mark where my top is, and we're gonna match up that up with the shoulder seam. And then all of the way around, we're gonna match up right sides together. So the right side of the sleeve is touching the right side of the bodice. And now I'm gonna do the same on the other sleeve. All right, now while we're at it, because I like to do everything at the same time, we're gonna attach our neckline. To get a nice even neckline, I like to use my little snips. I'm going to match up my shoulders and just snip a little bit here on the back and on the front to mark my back and front. And then I'm going to match up my back and front, and I'm going to snip on the sides to match my sides. Now, it's only a little bit off on this top because the front and the back are very similar in height. But if you have a scoop neckline, your shoulders, your quarter seams are not going to be your shoulders. They're going to be a lot lower. So you need to make sure that you mark your quarters to get a really nice even neckline. I'm going to grab my neckband, and I sewed it up here in the back already. So I'm going to fold wrong sides together where that crease is that we created earlier. And I'm going to trim this thread because I don't need it right now. And here's my back seam. And then I'm going to quarter that neckband going to the front here and marking it by clipping it as well. So that way I know exactly where it's at. And then I'm going to match the front and back and clip the sides as well for my quarters. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach those right sides together to the quarters that we created on our bodice. So the back is the higher point. And that's where I'm going to put in that seam right there. And then the other points that I created is where I'm going to attach those other points. As I'm attaching this on, I want to make sure that I open my seam allowance on my shoulders so it's nice and flat as I'm sewing it on. and do that for all of it. And then as I'm sewing this on, I'm stretching the neckband to fit my neck area. And I'll show you that over there at the sewing machine when I'm sewing it. Now, another thing that I like to go ahead and do right now is prep the hem. Since we're gonna be over there and do everything at the same time, I can go ahead and prep it. I'm gonna prep my hem. Here's my sleeve, hem here. And I'm just gonna fold it in and steam it. So that way it's ready. Now, one thing I will say about most knit fabrics is that it's easy to prep the hem because it really does kind of stay. But if yours is not staying, you may want to use clips, but usually it's really easy. It just stays folded. So it's easy to just leave it. So I've got one sleeve. I'm going to do the same for the other sleeve and then the bodice hem as well. So that way it's all prepped. When I go to my sewing machine, I can follow all these steps and we'll be done. That's how easy this top was. That's why I wanted to sew it up and show you just how easy it was. And then I'm going to show you, put it on and show you what it looks like all finished and all sewn on my sewing machine. I get questions about being able to sew knits on the sewing machine. And I'm always so excited about that because yes, you can. And I think some people think that it's not a, you're not able to get a really nice looking garment from your sewing machine. And you really, really are. Like, look, you're just opening that seam allowance here and it actually looks really nice and neat on the inside. All right, let's head over to our sewing machine and finish all those up and just finish this top up real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and sew this on the round with my same stitch, making sure that the raw edges are touching here. For my neckline, I like to start in the back where that back seam is, and I'm gonna place my neckband facing up on my sewing machine, and then I'm going to open up the seam here where my shoulder is, so that way when I go over it, it's opened. And then I'm going to go to that first clip and pull so that my neckband is flush with my bodice. And they're matching at the raw edge. Make sure my neckband is not folding under and getting trapped underneath. All right, and then we go ahead and sew. I'm gonna go to the next quarter point and stretch again, making sure it's flushed and it all looks good, and go all the way around doing the same thing. I'm using this finger to keep my fabric from rolling. But I am not pushing the fabric or anything. I'm allowing it to do its thing. All right, my neckband is done. Look at that. I'll just have to open up my seam allowance and just steam that down. But this is what the inside of the seam allowance looks like. You don't even see, it doesn't even look bad because you're just open up and it'll just look that way. If you want to top stitch your neckband, you totally can, and I would use the same stitch. But I'm not top stitching. I'm just gonna move on to hemming. And I'm using the same exact stitch for hemming as well. All right, so look at the neckline. We're opening that seam, or you can push it towards the bottom, whatever you want to do with that seam allowance there. Just give it a good steam. But look, see, my neckline looks nice and even. It's not bad, it's not puckering, it's not like saying, oh, she sewed me with a sewing machine. Nope. It looks good. You see that? Perfect. Here's my hem. Very nice as well. It still does not say sewing machine. That's my hem right there. And you can clip that seam allowance down to the thread. It's up to you. I leave it usually. And then my sleeves. Now I'm gonna go try it on and show you what it looks like. All right, friends, we are done with this sew. The neckline I wanted to show you. Well,
My necklace is in the way, but look. Plenty of stretch on the neckline, so I don't have to worry about it fitting or not. I will say this pattern is a little bit more fitted than I thought. This is the size that I usually make. I will probably size up for the next one, and I just wanted to warn you on that because it is a fitted pattern. And the sleeves could use a little bit of length on me, but I am 5'7", and I did not add any length to begin with. So it is a really good fitted pattern. This will make a perfect layering top that I can wear under jackets or a dress or something like that. It's really, really cute, and it was so simple to sew. I hope that this tutorial was helpful and encouraging to you if you're just starting to sew knits and you only have a sewing machine and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. You totally can, and I'm here to tell you, you really can do it. If you have any questions, comment below and let me know. Check out our other videos on here, and then check me out on Instagram at eloise.ezra, where I go and do a lot of stories on a daily and post a lot of inspiration. I hope you subscribe if you haven't. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!